All right, you all set? All right, let's go on the record. The record reflects the presence of all jurors, all counsel, and the defendant are present. Hope you all had a nice long weekend. Thank you very much for being on time. All right, Mr. Owens, next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people now call Detective John Johnson.
You do solemnly state that the testimony you are about to give in the matter now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you would, please have a seat at the witness stand. And if you would, please state your name and spell your first and last name for the record.
My name is John Johnson, John, John-S-O-N.
Thank you.
All right, good morning, Detective Johnson.
Morning,
All
sir.
right, direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Johnson, we've heard your name quite a bit over the course of the last week, but now we want to hear from you in terms of some of the follow-up investigation you did into the reported rapes that had occurred in the spring of 2018, and as well as a indecent exposure incident that happened on May 24th of 2018. Is it fair to say that you became the primary investigator into those offenses from the Sheriff's Department Sexual Assault Unit?
That would be fair.
When was it that you first became involved in this investigation?
On May 14th of 2018, I received a call out of a sexual assault examination, and that would be involving Jane Doe 2.
Was your first direct participation in that investigation when you responded to the sexual assault exam at the hospital?
At the SART facility, yes.
Did you in fact arrive after Nurse Ann Williams had already begun her sexual assault examination?
I arrived after the interview part was in progress, yes.
Were you briefed on the information that had been developed, at least as of that point in time, by the area detectives who were involved?
Yes.
Did that include Detective Adrian Moses?
Yes.
Did he inform you that a suspect had been identified at that point?
Yes.
And was that pursuant to a photographic lineup administered to Jane Doe number 2?
That's what they told me, yes.
Once you had that information, did you in fact seize evidence following the sexual assault exam that was conducted with Jane Doe 2?
I seized the sexual assault kit, the forensic kit that they collected a couple days later when it was processed by them.
In terms of the chain of custody process for the collection of the sexual assault kit, can you explain to the jury what you did?
I went to the facility. This particular facility was in Escondido, and met with Julissa, I believe that's Julissa, one of their clerks. And she went to the recesses of the facility and brought out paper sacks that were taped and sealed and initialed, and printed out a report and some paperwork, and I signed for that and took it away.
Is that the standard protocol from the Sheriff's Department Sexual Assault Unit in the collection of a SART kit?
That's pretty standard, yes.
Did you in fact receive the SART kit and book it into evidence under case ending 974 of the Sheriff's Department?
Yes, I did.
Did you submit any requests from the Sheriff's Department Crime Lab in relation to that SART kit?
Yes, when we impound a SART kit, we're actually required to request labs on the kit to get the process started.
And did you do so in this case?
Yes, I did.
Did you request DNA analysis of the items that had been seized and sealed within those evidence collection bags or the kit itself?
I asked them to develop a DNA profile and analyze it if they possibly could, certainly.
Now, in addition to the collection of the SART kit itself and the request for any DNA analysis, did you attempt to conduct some initial follow-up investigation by speaking with Jane Doe 2 herself?
Oh, certainly.
And at least in terms of when you spoke to Jane Doe 2, what date was that?
Well, during the SART exam, I listened to as much of the story as I was present for and asked her follow-up questions. That would have been May 14th.
And going forward in the weeks that followed, once you had a suspect identified in that photographic lineup, did you attempt to continue to investigate the case?
Yes.
On May 24th of 2018, did you receive information about another crime that had occurred in the city of Encinitas involving a person who matched the description for your case?
Yes, I did.
What information did you receive and how?
I know that a report was assigned to me, and I believe that I received a phone call from the area sergeant in the North Coastal Station informing me that indecent exposure had been reported, and they thought maybe I would wanted to look into that.
Did that incident, or was that reported incident, did it take place on Lake Drive in the city of Encinitas?
Yes.
Were you aware of the address associated with the suspect, Kellen Winslow, that you were investigating? Yes or no?
Yes.
Was that residence also on Lake Drive?
Yes.
What did you do based upon the information that was given to you initially about the indecent exposure incident on May 24th?
Well, I read the report that that the deputy took. I, at some point, watched his body-worn camera footage, and at some point, I went out and spoke with the reported victim of that crime.
And is that a person who we're referring to as Jane Doe number 3?
That would be correct.
When you met with Jane Doe number 3, did you have a Vietnamese-speaking deputy also present with you?
Yes, I did.
What date is it that you met with Jane Doe number 3?
I do believe that was June 7th.
When you first met with Jane Doe number 3 was on June 7th?
I think I met with her earlier than that alone, but with the translator it would have been June 7th, I'm pretty sure.
Let me ask you about the first time that you met with her. Do you recall the date that you actually sat down and met with Jane Doe number 3 the very first time?
I'd have to look at my report. I don't remember the exact date, no.
Would it refresh your recollection to refer to your report as to the date that you first met with her?
Certainly. Give me a moment, please.
Do you have the report in front of you?
I do.
As it relates to your attempts to interview and meet with Jane Doe number 3, when was it that you first made contact with her?
Well, there was a couple of phone messages exchanged, but I don't have a date for an earlier meeting listed than the actual June 7th date.
Did you in fact speak, or at least contact her on May 25th of 2018 and speak to her husband?
I got a voicemail on May 25th from her husband.
And when you spoke to her husband, did he inform you that she was a native Vietnamese speaker?
At some point, yes.
Did you make arrangements to have a Vietnamese-speaking deputy present for when you would meet with her?
Yes.
And did you arrange to actually meet with her on June 7th of 2018?
Yes.
When you personally met with Jane Doe number 3, did you, in advance of that meeting, did you prepare a photographic lineup to show her?
I had one prepared. I may have prepared it myself. I don't recall who prepared it, but yes.
And in terms of when you met with her, did you talk to her about what had happened?
Yes.
Did she primarily speak in Vietnamese or in English when you talked with her?
Well, it was primarily in broken English. I believe I understood most of it, but I made sure any admonishments formally stated to her were actually admonished in Vietnamese.
And was that by the deputy who had accompanied you?
That would be by Sergeant Min Nguyen.
And is that spelled M-I-N-H, last name N-G-U-Y-E-N?
Yes, it is.
And when that admonishment was provided to Jane Doe number 3, did she appear to understand what was explained to her?
Yes.
Can you tell us what happened when you presented the photographic lineup to Jane Doe 3?
Yes, what I usually do, so I don't exercise any undue influence, what I did this time is I put the photo lineup in a manila folder, and I put it down and step back from that so that they can open it and first pick it up. My fingers wouldn't be inadvertently pointing any picture or anything like that. She opened it, and she just barely glanced at it and stated essentially she didn't see the suspect there, didn't recognize anybody. I encouraged her to take a few seconds at least, take a few moments and look it over. That's what most people would do and examine each photo. And again, she just kind of glanced at it and just said that she didn't recognize anybody.
When you met with her on June 7th and attempted to show her the photographic lineup, did she appear to be upset?
Yes.
Was she willing to actually sit and look through the 6 photographs that were presented to her?
Well, it didn't appear to me she was truly looking at the 6 photographs with any kind of decisive behavior. It appeared to me she didn't want to look at them.
Now, in terms of her description of the suspect, did that description that she had provided, did that match Kellen Winslow, the suspect in the rape of Jane Doe number 2?
There were consistencies, yes.
Now, based upon that information, did you attempt to follow up on the potential participation in that act by Kellen Winslow?
Yes.
Now, let me ask you in terms of June 7th of 2018, the same day that you were administering the photo lineup to Jane Doe 3, had Mr. Winslow been contacted by the San Diego Sheriff's Department driving a black Hummer H2? Yes or no?
Yes.
Was a DNA swab collected by Deputy Sean Dwyer that day?
I watched Sean Dwyer collect a DNA sample from the inner cheek of Mr. Winslow, yes.
Was that sample then packaged pursuant to Sheriff's protocol and then passed along to you personally from Deputy Dwyer?
I want to say that it was put in the envelope right in my presence, and he handed it to me. I didn't want him to impound it. I wanted to impound it directly.
And did you in fact impound it directly under Sheriff's case number ending 974?
Yes.
And did you label those as being DNA oral swabs from Kellen Winslow?
Yes.
Did you submit that DNA reference sample from Mr. Winslow for comparison to the SART kit that had been collected from Jane Doe number 2?
Yes.
And was that request submitted to the San Diego Sheriff's Department Crime Lab?
Yes, it was.
Now, Going forward from June 7th of 2018, following that contact with Mr. Winslow, did the Sheriff's Department take any action as it related to a surveillance operation of Mr. Winslow?
Yes.
When was it that a surveillance operation was initiated by the Sheriff's Department in relation to June 7th?
When you say initiated, what do we mean exactly?
So let me ask you first, in terms of being the lead investigator, did you obtain a number of warrants through the San Diego Superior Court during the course of your investigation?
Yes, I did.
On June 8th of 2018, did you obtain a search warrant that allowed for video recording of a residence in San Diego County?
Yes, we commonly call it a poll cam warrant, and for the placement of a video type device in a nondescript position, a telephone pole if you will, in a neighborhood so we can watch the location.
Now, can you just explain to the jury the process by which you obtained a search warrant in order to be able to use a poll cam?
Well, I took the information that I had up to that point with the case, and I wrote out a warrant affidavit explaining what I was looking to search for, the location, what information I was seeking to gather, spelling out my experience that qualified me to make a judgment call, and what I hope to gain from it. And I submitted that to a Superior Court judge, and that judge agreed that I had cause to issue a search warrant and to look for that data.
What division of the Sheriff's Department participated in the surveillance operation that included the use of the poll cam?
There were a number of people involved, but it all fell under what I call the Special Investigations Division, SID.
Now, did the Special Investigations Division participate in a surveillance while using that poll cam beginning June 8th of 2018 and then continuing until June 14th of 2018?
So from, yes, from the wee hours of June 8th of 2018, the Special Investigations Division, a group of them, and they rotated through, actually had eyes on or hard surveillance of the location we were looking at, as well as a subdivision of that unit was able at some point within that day or the next day, I can't recall, to put up an actual poll cam that can be monitored on various devices through Wi-Fi or whatever means we look at it. And they essentially, for about 7 days, did a hard surveillance.
And in terms of the poll cam itself, is that something that is surreptitiously placed actually on a telephone pole?
Well, I hope it's surreptitious. I suppose some people might recognize it, but when I've seen them do it, they dress up in all the construction worker type clothing and put these things where hopefully no one would notice what they are.
Now, once that poll cam had been installed on June 8th, did you have an opportunity to review any footage that had been recorded by that poll cam on June 8th, 2018?
Yes, I both viewed it real time, irregular basis. I would log in and look at certain things, and then at the close of that portion of the active investigation, I had a chance to review some of the data that was recorded from the poll cam early on.
Now, when you say that you would be able to periodically review the footage yourself, were you also in communication with the SID team sergeant who was spearheading the actual surveillance operation at times?
I was getting a lot of text messages and phone calls throughout, yes.
And were you communicating constantly with the SID team regarding their observations on a given shift?
Not constantly, but I'd certainly overhear or be privy to things on a very, very regular basis, yes.
Did you receive any information regarding whether or not the suspect vehicle, the black Hummer H2, whether that was located at the residence associated with Mr. Winslow?
Yes, that was seen at least several times at the residence.
On June 8th of 2018, when the pole cam had been installed and was operational, was that placed in a location where it would be able to record the happenings at the residence where Mr. Winslow lived on Lake Drive?
Well, yes, it had a view into the inner compound, if you will, not into the house itself, but the inner compound facing the garage doors on the detached garage, and also the entryway from Lake Drive into the compound. And of course, the system is rigged in such a way where an operator can actually move the camera and zoom and pull back.
Now, have you actually been to that residence?
Yes, I have.
And is that located in the 1300 block of Lake Drive?
Yes, it is.
Would you characterize that as being on the north end of the street, close to Santa Fe Drive?
Yes.
And Your Honor, if I can alert the media as to the display of the next exhibit,
All right?
showing you what's been marked as People's or Courts Exhibit 6 for identification. Do you see the bubble that is positioned in the center of this map?
Yes.
And do you see that that would be the location of the residence on Lake Drive?
That would be consistent, yes.
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach briefly?
All right? On the record?
No, it can be off the record.
Okay. All right, the court met with counsel at an unreported sidebar conference. I'm going to order the media not publish Court Exhibit number 6. It has the defendant's address on it, so that address is not to be published or reported. All right? Next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just give the same advisal that in one moment the people will be displaying the same exhibit.
All right?
I'm showing you Courts Exhibit 49. Is this the front entrance to the residence where Mr. Winslow resided?
Yes.
And is that in the, on Lake Drive, the area that we're discussing?
Yes.
Now, in terms of the poll cam footage that you had an opportunity to review, did you in fact speak with the SID team, review the footage itself, and receive information regarding what happened to the Hummer H2 on June 8th of 2018? for identification. Do you see what's depicted here?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you tell us what we're looking at Court's Exhibit 120?
Well, from the angle of the pole cam, facing into the compound, a truck pulled in that appeared to be a on-site vehicle detailing mobile business, and came in and did its business.
In looking at Court's Exhibit 120, do you actually see the mobile detailing truck depicted in the driveway area?
Yes,
Did that arrive at approximately 1:37 p.m. on June 8th?
that would be correct.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 121, does this show the detail truck now parked in the front driveway area adjacent to the garage?
Yes, it does.
Is that at the same time of 1:37 p.m.?
Yes,
Showing you Court's Exhibit 122 at 1:39 p.m., does it show that the detailer is now preparing to conduct the detail?
that's what it shows.
Showing you now 1:43 p.m. on Court's Exhibit 123. Does that show the Hummer H2 being retrieved from the garage area?
It shows it backing out, yes.
Detective Johnson, is it fair to say that these are just a series of still shots from the actual recording that we're not going to play because it would be too long, but does this accurately depict those screenshots from the video recording from the poll cam?
Yes,
Showing you Court's Exhibit 124 at 1:45 p.m., does that show the detailer essentially doing his work currently on the outside of the vehicle?
yes,
Showing you Court's Exhibit 125, does that have a timestamp of 1:47 p.m.?
yes,
Does that show the detailer continuing to do his work?
yes,
Showing you Court's Exhibit 126 at 1:52 p.m., does that show the detailer now working on the interior portion of the Hummer H2?
yes. It even appeared that he was spraying the interior. That was the strange thing.
Now showing Court's Exhibit 127, does that have a timestamp of 3:05 p.m.? So now we're approximately an hour and a half into the detailing.
Hold on a second. That's correct.
And does that show him retrieving some of his equipment?
That's what it looks like.
Now showing Court's Exhibit 128 at 3:34 p.m. Has the Hummer H2 been returned into the garage area?
Yes,
And showing Court's Exhibit 129 at 3:39 p.m. Does that show the mobile detailing unit leaving the area?
yes,
Now, in terms of the surveillance operation that was done, you mentioned that it continued until June 14th of 2018, is that right?
that's correct.
On June 14th of 2018, did you attempt to obtain, or pardon me, prior to the June 14th date, in addition to the search warrant that you obtained in order to record the area that we're seeing in this exhibit, did you also obtain a search warrant to place a GPS tracker on the suspect vehicle, the Hummer H2?
Yes, I did.
When did you do that?
I want to say the warrant was obtained actually before June 7th. We couldn't place the tracker because the vehicle was inaccessible. The pole cam went up and the tracker was placed actually on, the vehicle was parked at some point on June 7th in a public parking lot. At that point, the tracker was placed and a warrant was executed to be able to track the warrant.
Can you explain to the jury what a GPS tracker does and how it works in terms of law enforcement's surveillance techniques?
To some extent. What we essentially do is take a small electronic device that can be surreptitiously attached to a vehicle or some other device, the bicycle or anything, and it gives us the ability, it sends out GPS information at different, I lost my word, sorry. At different intervals.
Intervals?
Different intervals, which we can monitor either real-time through a computer or some sort of computer device, or we can monitor later, and in fact, the systems that we use actually stockpile the data so we can go back and look at patterns and see where people have been.
Does it provide both real-time and historical information?
Yes, it does.
In terms of the GPS tracker on the Hummer H2 associated with Mr. Winslow, was that being monitored in conjunction with the surveillance done by the Special Investigations Division?
Yes, it was.
In addition to the poll cam and the GPS tracker warrant that was in place, did you also obtain a search warrant for the residents that we're talking about on the 1300 block of Lake Drive?
Yes, I did.
Did you obtain that search warrant from a Superior Court judge on June 14th of 2018?
Yes.
Did you also obtain an arrest warrant for the suspect Kellen Winslow on that same date?
Yes.
Were the arrest warrant and the search warrant concurrently executed on the afternoon of June 14th?
Within minutes of one another, yes.
Was Mr. Winslow in fact taken into custody?
Yes.
Did you see him that day, yes or no?
Yes.
If I may have a moment, Your Honor?
All right.
Showing you what's been marked for identification as Court's Exhibit 36. Do you recognize this as being the way in which Mr. Winslow looked on June 14th of 2018?
Yes.
Now, in terms of you as the lead investigator as well as other members of the Sheriff's Department, is it fair to say that you weren't present during the execution of the search warrant at the residence that afternoon? At least initially when it was being done.
I had to delegate that to other people, correct.
Now, when Mr. Winslow was taken into custody on June 14th, did he have a cell phone on him?
Yes.
Was that cell phone seized?
Yes.
Who was it that seized that item and what did you do with it?
That would be me. I took the cell phone. At some point, I was actually able to obtain a passcode for the cell phone. And then I placed the cell phone in airplane mode so it could not be remotely erased. And then I impounded that cell phone into sheriff's evidence.
Now, when you impounded that into sheriff's evidence, did you in fact recruit or at least enlist the help of a sheriff's analyst in order to conduct a download of the cell phone?
Yes, I find it's better to use the analysts who are trained to do that sort of thing to do the technical workups on devices like that.
And did you in fact do so in this case?
Yes, I did.
Who was it that conducted the cell phone download of Mr. Winslow's phone that was seized on his person on June 14th?
Haley McKinney, Hailey, McKinney.
And we're going to hear from Ms. McKinney sometime today. But let me ask you in terms of what you directly did. Did you in fact request that photographs be taken of Mr. Winslow in addition to the one that we're seeing in Court's Exhibit 36?
So I had several photographs of Mr. Winslow taken, yes.
Thank you. And I'd like to go through them if we can. May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
beginning with Court's Exhibit 36. Does that show the front facial area of Mr. Winslow on June 14th?
Yes.
Showing you now Court's Exhibit 37 for identification. What does that show?
That would be the left side of Mr. Winslow, now only wearing his skivvy shorts.
Does that show the tattoo that extends from his left shoulder to the top of his left shoulder down towards his forearm?
It shows his sleeve tattoo, yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 38 for identification. Would this be the same perspective but just from the right side now?
That's correct.
Showing you now Court's Exhibit, does that also show a sleeve tattoo that extends from his right shoulder all the way down to his wrist?
I believe they call it a full sleeve tattoo, yes.
Is that consistent with the description given by Jane Doe number 3?
Yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 39 for identification. Is that a close-up view of the same left tattoo area?
Yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 40. Does that show a tattoo with the initial K and the number 2?
Yes, it does.
And are you aware of whether or not that is a nickname that's used for Mr. Winslow?
I've seen it several times associated with Mr. Winslow, yes.
Does Court's Exhibit 40 show the right upper arm area in close-up fashion, primarily upon the bicep and the left shoulder?
Well, I do believe that's the left upper arm, but yes.
I misspoke, I apologize. Showing you now Court's Exhibit 41. What does that show?
I don't have it up here, but that would be the lower part of his left forearm and a tattoo that's there.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 42 for identification. Do you see that exhibit?
Yes, I do.
And does that show Mr. Winslow's back area and the tattoos that are contained there?
Yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 43 for identification. Is this a now close-in view of his right arm extending from his shoulder down towards his wrist?
Yes.
And does that show a large U on the shoulder area?
That's what it appears to be.
Is that the emblem of the University of Miami, if you know?
That's what I've been told.
Is that where Mr. Winslow played football?
That's what my research has shown.
Now, looking at the rest of the tattoo, does it have a series of black lines that extend down in a tribal pattern all the way through his right forearm?
Yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 44, what does that show?
It's a more close-up view of what we've just discussed, the U and the tribal markings.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 45, what's shown there?
Again, we see the lower part of the right arm with the single color, if you will, or darker color tribal tattoo markings.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 46 for identification, what does that display?
And that would be consistent with Mr. Winslow's right side, right arm, lower portion down to his wrist with the same sort of tattooed markings.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 47, is there a tattoo on the left forearm area?
Yes.
And what's contained there?
It's wording, without struggle, there is no progress.
And now showing you Court's Exhibit 48 for identification, what's shown there?
This would be what I believe is the right lower but inner arm of Mr. Winslow.
Now, Detective Johnson, I know we're talking about various dates that were associated with your follow-up investigation, but these photographs were taken on June 14th, correct?
Yes.
Was the Hummer H2 located and seized on June 14th of 2018?
Yes, it was.
Was that seized at the residence or at a different location?
At a different location.
Generally speaking, what part of town was the Hummer H2 seized at?
It was a portion of San Diego. I don't know that area real well, but I want to say it's the Mission Bay type area, more coastal.
And were there detectives from the sheriff's department who, in fact, responded to that location based upon the GPS tracker coordinates?
Yes.
Was the Hummer H2 being monitored by active surveillance or with actually hard surveillance? I think you used that term, with eyes on.
At some point, they had followed the H2. However, I believe they broke off that surveillance because it was not being driven by Mr. Winslow, but by somebody else. So they primarily used the GPS tracker to follow it, and then at some point there was some hard surveillance or eyes on that drove by the location where it was supposed to be parked to verify that it was there.
Now, when that was done on June 14th, do you recall the date that the Hummer was last seen at the Winslow residence on Lake Drive?
I thought it left on June 8th or June 9th, but I can't be sure about that.
So if it was detailed on June 8th, as we were just discussing, based upon the poll cam exhibits, would it refresh your recollection to refer to the additional exhibits showing that area?
If they're the poll cam exhibits, probably will.
So beginning with Court's Exhibit 130 for identification, do you recognize what's depicted there?
Yes, I do.
What is the date and time stamp on Court's Exhibit 130?
June 11, or actually 6/11/2018, at approximately 9:41 a.m.
Does that refresh your recollection as to the last time that the Hummer H2 was seen at the Winslow residence?
Yes, the events there are, the video depicted in this clip, or from this clip, is the video where we see the Hummer drive off.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 130 for identification, is that the one that you're describing right now?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury what's seen there?
Well, the H2 is in the main compound outside of the garage area, and there's a blue, I'll call it a four-door hatchback that's in the compound as well.
And the blue vehicle that you're seeing, is that, are you able to describe the make and model of it?
Well, probably on Exhibit 131 I can.
So then moving to Court's Exhibit 131, first, what is the date and time stamp associated with that?
That would be June 11th, 2018 at approximately 09:42 a.m.
And looking at that exhibit, do you see any individuals that are present?
I see Mr. Winslow apparently walking out from his home towards the vehicles.
And the second vehicle would be, what would be the make and model of the blue vehicle?
You know, I see the words and I see the make, and I just can't be sure. It looks like a Range Rover, but I just don't know.
Do you see that there's also a white Tesla that's parked in the garage area?
Yes.
And would that, is it fair to say that that would be Mr. Winslow's wife's car?
Yes.
Based upon the surveillance?
Apparently so, yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 132 for identification, what would be the date and time stamp of this poll cam still shot?
June 11th, 2018, 10:09 a.m.
And do you see that there is another individual that's now present around the vehicle? Or
Yeah.
another?
Yes, there's two other individuals, apparently a smaller built female close to Mr. Winslow, and then apparently a male wearing a white shirt and it looks like dark shorts on the driver's side of the H2.
And based upon your review of this surveillance video, did that person who's wearing the white shirt, did he arrive in the blue Range Rover?
Yes.
And can you just explain to the jury, based upon your review, what was happening here?
Well, it appeared that the vehicle was being checked over, and then driven away by that male. Looks like it's being sold or borrowed or taken away.
Showing Court's Exhibit 133, when you say that it was being checked over, did the male wearing the white shirt who arrived in the Range Rover, did he look through the exterior and the interior portion of the car?
Yes.
Showing now Court's Exhibit 134 for identification, does that show now the blue Range Rover being driven away from the residence?
Well, it's June 11th, 2018 at 10:21 in the morning, and we see the Range Rover starting to depart.
Do you see whether or not the Hummer H2 is doing the same?
Well, in this photo, you can see that it started to back up, or it's moved from its position going backwards, if you will.
And who was seen driving the Hummer H2 at this point?
Well, that would be the male that arrived, the one in the white shirt.
And was there in fact a female occupant and driver of the blue Range Rover that was seen driving away?
Yes.
And lastly, showing in Court's Exhibit 135 for identification, what does that show?
It shows the H2 departing the Winslow compound, and that's the last time that I ever saw it present there.
Now, was the GPS tracker, once it departed the residence on Lake Drive, did that remain active and it ultimately led to the seizure on June 14th?
Yes.
In terms of follow-up investigation that was done regarding the Hummer H2, did you request to have it forensically processed?
Absolutely.
With the Sheriff's Department, who is it that processes a vehicle forensically?
Under the Sheriff's Crime Lab, they have field evidence technicians, FETs or CSI, some like to call them, that actually do the scientific examinations like that.
And the FETs or CSI that you're referring to, is that actually a division within the Sheriff's Crime Lab made up of criminalists who have been trained in that area?
Yes.
And in terms of you as the detective, how is it that you alert the crime lab to the need to forensically process something?
Well, there's a couple ways. Certainly in this case, I called them an email as well to arrange for it, but I also have to fill out a lab services request to get it on their schedule and get it taken care of.
And were you present for that forensic processing, or was that done by the criminalists themselves?
Well, the criminalists did the processing themselves, but I was present also as in the garage at the old sheriff's evidence. I was the one present for that as well. They want to have a detective present when they're doing their work.
Now, we're going to be jumping forward to a couple other areas of your investigation that you followed up on, just so we don't have to call you another time. But in terms of some of the evidence that was seized during the execution of the search warrant, that was done on June 14th at this same residence, correct?
The execution of the house search warrant, yes, that would be the same location and the same date. That's true.
Once those items had been impounded into evidence, did you then go back to look at the list of impounded items to determine whether or not there were any articles of clothing that were consistent with the description given by any one of the victims?
Yes, I did.
Showing you what's been marked as Court's Exhibit 60 for identification. Do you see what's depicted here?
Yes, that appears to be a blue backpack.
Is that blue backpack consistent with the one described by Jane Doe number 3?
In its color, yes.
And in terms of the impounding of the items of evidence and the photographing of where this item was located, is it fair to say that was done by the field evidence technician who responded to the search warrant on June 14th?
Yes.
Would that be Brande Silverthorn?
Yes.
So then directing your attention to Court's Exhibit 61 for identification, do you recognize what's depicted here?
Yes, it appears to be a one-piece bicycle or workout type suit.
And is this, these photographs, were they actually items of clothing that were laid out on butcher paper at the Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
And was this recovered from the residence?
Yes,
Showing Court's Exhibit 62 for identification, does that show that same article of clothing, just from the reverse?
yes.
What would be the coloring that you, or can you just describe the color of that item?
Well, it's darker in the bottom and lighter in the top. I call it white and black.
Showing Court's Exhibit 63 for identification, does that show that same article, same item?
Yes,
Showing Court's Exhibit 64 for identification, do you see what this is?
yes, that's an overshirt, a zippered overshirt, common for working out or bicyclists.
Is there a particular emblem that's visible on the exhibit?
There's an orange emblem, but the word Strava is very clear.
And is that on the right chest area?
Yes,
And does that look as though it's like a pullover or a outer garment?
yes,
Showing you Court's Exhibit 65 for identification, were each of these items actually seized at the residence on June 14th of 2018?
yes.
And you see what this is on Court's Exhibit 65?
That's the same shirt that we've zoomed in on the word Strava.
Showing Court's Exhibit 66 for identification, does that show the emblem you were referring to?
Yes,
Showing Court's Exhibit 67 for identification, does this show another pullover?
I'm not sure if that's the same one. I thought that's the same one. Am I mistaken?
Going back?
Yeah, that's the same one.
And does it show the left chest area?
Yes,
Showing Court's Exhibit 68 for identification, is that a close-up of the left chest area?
yes,
Showing you Court's Exhibit 69 for identification, does it show the back area of that same garment?
that's what that is.
And showing you Court's Exhibit 70, does that show the lower portion area?
The little pockets in the lower back part, yes.
Would you characterize this as cycling uniform or cycling attire?
Yes, I would.
Now, we're talking about some of the processing that was done by others, as well as your review of the items that were recovered. Were there a number of electronic devices that were seized at the Winslow residence on June 14th?
Yes, there was.
What did you do as the lead investigator as it relates to those items?
Well, at some point, I obtained, I believe, a separate search warrant for the actual electronic forensic search of the data on those items. And then I transported those items to a couple of different law enforcement forensic labs so that their people could go into the items and try to bring out whatever information they could.
Are you familiar with the term RCFL?
Yes, I am.
Is that the Regional Computer Forensics Laboratory?
Yes, it is.
Is there an RCFL in different locations throughout the state?
In different regions, there's different RCFLs, yes.
And I'm not going to ask you about any technical expertise, that's going to be for another witness, but in terms of when items are forensically examined at your request, once they've been forensically examined and the data that's contained within them is downloaded, is that then provided to you as the investigator for review?
They give me a separate working copy of all the data that they've extracted so I can go through it without corrupting the original data on the device.
And was that in fact done with a number of different devices that were seized at the Winslow residence?
Yes, it was.
Did that include digital images, digital video recordings, and photographs, things of that nature?
Yes,
In terms of the devices that were seized on June 14th, did that include a GoPro camera that can be either mounted on a bicycle or a helmet or things of that nature?
there's a GoPro camera, yes.
Was that forensically examined?
Yes,
Were there a number of laptop computers that were likewise forensically examined?
Yes,
Was different data from the laptop computers, was that then provided to you for review?
to myself and my analyst, yes.
Were there also a number of digital cameras, hard drives, things of that nature?
Yes,
Was there a DVR that was linked to a home surveillance system also recovered?
yes, there was.
Is it fair to say that some of the surveillance system that was in place at the Winslow residence was cloud-based and didn't store the surveillance locally on the actual items that were seized?
Objection, Your Honor, foundation.
Overall, it's a yes or no question. You can answer it if you know the answer.
I don't know if there was cloud-based, but the DVR stopped at a certain date, so I assumed that it probably went on through some other system, which I never located.
And in terms of the hard drive of the DVR for the surveillance system that was downloaded, that you did review, did that include the date range of March 17th of 2018?
Yes, it did.
And did you in fact review some surveillance footage that was, that depicted the front curtilage area or the front driveway area of Mr. Winslow's home?
Yes, I did.
Did you also review a video that appears to have been taken from a GoPro device that was mounted on the front of Mr. Winslow's bicycle?
Well, it appeared to be mounted on his bicycle, but I didn't see the bicycle.
Based upon the perspective of the camera, is that
Yeah.
fair to say?
Yes,
So I'm going to show you what's been marked as Court's Exhibit 91 for identification. You see what's depicted there?
yes, I do.
Is that a still image from that GoPro video recording?
Yes, it is.
And was this contained within the data that you personally reviewed that was returned to you from the Regional Computer Forensic Laboratory?
Yes.
Looking at that still shot, can you describe what's seen there?
Well, that appears to be Mr. Winslow in bicycle attire next to a red box, if you will, at some sort of gas station or convenience store.
When you say a red box, is that one of those DVD distribution units at different locations?
That's what a red box would be, yes.
And are you able to see the any writing on that article of clothing that's depicted there?
The shorts, there's a word that looks very similar to Strava. I only see the first couple of letters, though.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as Court's Exhibit 91 for identification. I know it's a little washed out when we're looking at it in a well-lit courtroom, but are you able to see that writing that's on the right leg area of the bicycle shorts?
Well, again, I see it there, but I don't see it any more clearly than I see it on the digital screen up top.
So Detective Johnson, have you reviewed the actual video that shows that contains these still images?
Yes, on the video it's clear because with the movements and such, you can actually make out the words better.
Does it say Strava?
Yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 92 for identification, does that show Mr. Winslow at least attempting to place an item into his backpack area?
It's what it looks like. The small of his back has pockets and he's reaching back there.
And what type of shoes is he wearing?
Well, they're what I call bicyclist shoes in that there appears to be a little mounting disc or block under the front of the shoes, and typically those, in my experience, lock into pedals on higher-end bikes or with more serious bicyclists.
Showing Court's Exhibit 93 for identification, does that show Mr. Winslow now with his back turned?
Yes,
What does he have on his back?
a backpack.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 94 for identification, does that show Mr. Winslow now stretching towards the right?
Yep,
And showing you Court's Exhibit 95 for identification, does that show Mr. Winslow stretching to the left?
yes,
And are his tattoos visible in these different photographs?
Throughout the different photographs, there's tattooing that's consistent with the tattoos that I've seen Mr. Winslow with in other environments, yes.
Now, in addition to the GoPro video, is it fair to say that there are a number of, in addition to this GoPro video, are there a number of different videos that were downloaded that show Mr. Winslow riding his bicycle in different areas that are in North County, San Diego? We'll just describe it that way.
There's a number of videos that depict North County, San Diego, that seem to be a bicyclist riding through these areas. In some of the shots, I can see a reflection from a window or such that appears to be Mr. Winslow, but the presumption is that he's riding his bike. But
Now, in addition to that, we talked about the DVR of the surveillance system. Did you have an opportunity to review the footage from March 17th of 2018?
yes,
Showing you Courts Exhibit 96 for identification. Do you see what's depicted there?
yes.
Can you describe first the date and time stamp that was contained on the video footage that was downloaded from that DVR of the surveillance system?
In the still shot, it appears to be March 17th, 2018. It looks like it says SAT. I assume that's a Saturday. And the time is more difficult. There's something 32.
Is that 02, 32, and 33 seconds p.m.?
Oh, it's PM, so it's 02, so that'd be, yes, 2:32 in the afternoon.
And can you just describe what it shows?
Well, I've watched the video, so it's clear, but the picture is Mr. Winslow walking out from the house area. The video system appears to be motion activated, so at some point it begins recording, and it shows him walking towards the garage area wearing his workout type clothes, so the white shoes, some shorts, and a dark shirt.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 97 for identification. Does that contain a video, that, again, from this motion-activated surveillance system with another date and time stamp?
Yes, that'd be March 17th, 2018, and now we're looking at about 2:33 in the afternoon, and we see the H2, the Hummer, starting to drive out of the compound.
Did that Hummer actually reverse out of the garage area and leave the compound?
On the video, yes.
And now showing you Courts Exhibit 98 for identification. What is the date and time stamp that's seen here?
And now we have the same date, March 17th, 2018, but the timestamp is 4:52 p.m. and it shows the H2 re-entering the compound from the street area.
Based upon your review of the data that was available on that DVR, did you see Mr. Winslow at the residence in that location or the Hummer H2 at the residence in that location at any time between 2:33 and 4:52 p.m.?
Between those times?
Correct.
No, it appeared he was gone.
Thank you. Nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
All right, Cross?
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Johnson, you sat in the interview with Jane Doe 2 at the SART exam, is that right?
Most of it, yes, sir.
Yeah. Those SART exams are very important, right?
I think so, yes.
Okay. And when you listened to the interview, you saw the SART nurse speaking with Jane Doe 2, right?
Yes,
And Jane Doe 2 was telling what happened, right?
yes.
And she never said, in fact, what she did say was, they never had any conversations about sex, isn't that right?
Prior to that evening, correct.
So at that SART exam, she told the SART nurse and you, as you were sitting there, that Kevin and her never had any conversations about sex, right?
Prior to that evening, correct.
Right. And in fact, the first time you heard about Jane Doe 2 saying that they did in fact have conversations about sex and money was right before the preliminary hearing, isn't that right?
Yes,
That was the first time you ever heard that, right?
that'd be correct.
So all the other detectives that she spoke with, she never brought that up, right?
No, I don't believe it ever came out. It certainly would have been something I would have noticed.
Right. And so the first time you hear it is right before she's about to testify for the first time under penalty of perjury, right?
I want to say it's I'm not sure how it was communicated to me, but that would be the time frame, correct?
Right. You did hear Jane Doe 2 say she described the sex that occurred, is that right? She described the sex
Yes.
to the SART nurse, and she described vaginal intercourse, is that right?
Yes.
And then when she talked about anal contact, she said, quote, she thought that was an accident, right?
She thought it might have been an accident. She didn't know, yeah.
Right. And you documented that in your report, right?
Oh, yes.
And you actually put it in quotes, right?
I put, yes,
And it's important that you put in quotes because that's actually what she said.
that'd be correct.
So she thought the anal contact was an accident.
That's what she said.
Right. She described the choking to you, right?
Yes.
She said he had both hands around her neck for approximately 2 minutes.
Her words, yes.
Right. She said that she would have been dead had he done it any longer, right?
I believe so, yes. She was concerned about that, yes.
Right. Did she ever tell you or anyone else that she thought that he did it in a way that it wouldn't leave marks?
I don't recall that statement, no.
Have you ever heard that statement?
I don't believe so.
Okay. You showed Jane Doe 3 the photo lineup, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And she did not identify Mr. Winslow, did she?
She did not.
She told you that she'd seen the suspect twice total.
That'd be correct.
And she spoke with him both times, right?
Yes.
And she specifically said that none of the photos that you showed her were the suspect, right?
Well, that's correct.
Okay. And the tattoos that we saw in Court's Exhibit 43 of Mr. Winslow's arms, the tattoos, yeah. None of those tattoos are blue, are they? They're the standard tattoo green, right?
I'd call them darker. I'd even call them black. If you like green, that's better too. They're not. I don't see blue now.
Right. You see a little orange,
Yes.
and you see a little very, very light green, right?
I think there's some yellow and green in there. Yeah.
Okay. And the rest of the tribal tattoo is the standard, what we call tattoo green, right?
It's all one color. Yes.
Now, you said that you saw some surveillance where Mr. Winslow got his car washed, right?
Yes.
Now, that would occurred actually 3 months after Jane Doe 1 allegedly bled all over his car, right?
About 3 months. Yes.
Okay. And, well, people with nice cars get their car washed, detailed, right?
I think so. Yeah.
And did you interview the detailer to see how often he would come out to the house and detail the car?
I've never met the detailer. I never identified him. I never spoke with him. It might have been very consistent. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And did any of you or any of your agents ask the detailer, did he clean any blood out of the car?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Did they ask him, did he clean any bodily fluids out of the car?
None of them spoke with him.
Okay. And just so we know, technically you can't really clean blood out of a car or any object, right? Because luminol can still show that there was blood there, right?
Objection lacks foundation and calls for speculation.
If you know.
Overruled, you can answer if you know.
I know in my training, we don't use luminol, we use Blue Star, I found out. In my training, the RE agents that they use can frequently bring out blood that's been washed down, covered up, painted over, and then in other times we've had it not show up blood at all that we knew was there. So I probably a more expert person would answer that better for you.
And, but you or none of your agents went and questioned the detail guy, right? The car washer.
That's what I said, yes, sir.
Okay. Did you ever talk to the man that you saw take the car? You said that he drove off with I forget what court exhibit it was, but you said there was a man who ended up driving the Hummer away and you never saw it again, is that right?
I didn't see it back at the house, but a man drove it away, yes.
And you spoke to him, and you realized that he's a licensed car dealer, right?
Oh, I didn't speak to him. Two other detectives spoke with him.
All right, and they found out that he was a licensed car dealer, right?
I didn't verify a license. Based on conversation, I believe he deals in cars on a regular basis.
In fact, he was the man that gave Mr. Winslow the car, right?
I didn't interview him.
Did you learn that from any of your detectives that interviewed him?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Sustained, you do not need to answer.
When you forensically processed the car, did you find any blood in the car?
I did not find any blood in the car, no.
Okay. And when you searched the house, did you find a gun?
Well, I didn't search the house, but the people that did search the house, I don't recall them impounding any weapons at all.
No weapons at all. If I repeat, moment, Sean?
Okay?
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm going to show you this photo, which is going to be court's exhibit number. Next in order.
Oh, has it not been marked yet?
May I
No,
give
it has
that,
not.
may I give that court's exhibit number 115?
115. I'm going to show you court's exhibit number 115. Do you recognize the people depicted in this photo?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you recognize that being at the preliminary hearing?
I believe that's at the prelim, yes.
Okay.
Or one of the showings.
Oh, well, the record's going to reflect, you're showing it to him on a tablet. Do we have a hard piece of paper that has the photo on it so we can actually mark it?
It's a good question.
Or do you just want to mark your tablet?
No, we're going to.
Or can you?
117? Okay, correction, Your Honor, for that exhibit that was just presented by Attorney Watkins, that will be court's exhibit number 117.
Okay, and that was the one you showed the witness, correct, Mr.
Yes, Your
Watkins? Okay,
With the court's permission, we do have it loaded up to show the jury. We could get a hard copy.
That's fine.
Back to later. Thank
you can provide a hard copy later. Do you want to put it on the screen or not? Okay, so this will be court exhibit 117.
Now, that's Mr. Winslow at the preliminary hearing, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Is his head shaved, like Jane Doe once said?
No, his head's not shaved, no.
And you were there present at that preliminary hearing of Jane Doe 1, right?
I was there for the prelim where Jane Doe 1 testified. Yes, I was.
And that's how Mr. Winslow looked that day, right?
Yes.
With his hair exactly like that.
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, any redirect?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, is he your investigating officer today?
If he may be, yes, thank you.
All right, so you can resume your seat at council table. All right, next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people now call Angela Rosa.
All right.
He has a bunch of videos. Down.
Do we have a hard copy of that? Do we have a hard? Oh, thank you.
Step aside, so the people would now call Brande Silverthorn.
Okay.
You do solemnly state that the testimony you are about to give in the matter now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? If you would, please have a seat at the witness stand. And if you would, please state your name and spell your first and last name for the record.
Brande Silverthorn, BrandeSilverthorn.
Thank you.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, direct examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Silverthorn.
Good morning.
Can you tell the jury what you do for a living?
I am the Senior Forensic Evidence Technician with the San Diego Sheriff's Department.
How long have you worked with the San Diego Sheriff's Department?
I've been with the Sheriff's Department since 2011.
Can you tell them what your duties include?
My primary responsibility is the identification, preservation, documentation, and collection of evidence at crime scenes. If I'm not doing those duties, then I also do latent print development on items of evidence in the lab.
Are you actually a fingerprint technician that allows you to be able to do comparisons?
I do not do the comparisons.
What do you mean when you say that you work with fingerprints?
So I do latent print development, which means on items of evidence that are collected from the crime scene, I will process those using different techniques to try to develop prints that may be present on an item of evidence.
Are you a criminalist?
I am not.
What is a criminalist?
A criminalist is a scientist in the lab. They have a 4-year hard science degree in chemistry or biology, something like that. And they do the analysis of the work that we bring in, the evidence that we bring in. So an example would be a DNA analyst, a firearms examiner, something like that.
So you, as a senior field evidence technician with the Sheriff's Department, is it fair to say that you would then respond to a location in order to properly seize and secure and identify and itemize all the various things that are being collected in the course of investigation?
That would be correct.
Were you in fact assigned to the investigation into a sexual assault that had led to a search warrant that was being executed in the 1300 block of Lake Drive on June 14th, 2018?
Yes, I was.
Prior to that point in time, had you participated in the investigation with the sexual assault unit in any capacity?
I had not.
Can you just tell the jury in terms of what you were then privy to at that point? Were you asked to conduct a walkthrough first of all of the items that were being identified by various members of law enforcement?
Yes, so during that day, I was asked to attend a briefing prior to the execution of the search warrant. And then once the search warrant was executed, I responded to the residents and assisted with that search warrant. In doing that, I took photographs of the residents. We call them overall photographs of the entire residence before a search was conducted. And then working with my partners on the law enforcement side, the detectives and deputies conducted a search, identified items of evidence, and we identified those items with yellow placards so that I could take additional photographs of where those items were located.
And did you do that on June 14th?
Yes.
And when you say that you're working with your partners that are the law enforcement officers, is it fair to say that it's a team effort in terms of locating something that may be of interest in the case and documenting where it was located?
That's correct.
Can you just explain to the jury how that happens? Is it basically a detective walking along saying, hey, what about that?
Yes, in this case, we had a large area, and so what we had decided as a team was the detectives and the deputies would take a yellow placard and they would conduct a search in a particular area. If they identified an item of evidence that they felt may or may not be relevant, they wanted to collect it, they would lay the yellow placard next to the item that they wanted collected. I would then come into the room and take additional photographs of that item before it was packaged and collected.
Now, in terms of the overall photographs that you took, did you in fact take a photograph from the outside perspective, outside of the wall that encloses the property?
I did.
Let me just have a moment, Your Honor, so we can switch over for the exhibit.
All right.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 49 for identification. It's been previously shown. Is this the photograph that you took of the overall area?
Yes, it is.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 51 for identification. Looking here, do you see two items that have been identified by placard that were located within the residence?
Yes.
Can you just describe for the jury where this is within the residence?
Yes. When you came in the front door to the residence, if you turned to the left, there was a dining area and a kitchen area to the left. This area is against the left wall of that area between the dining room and the kitchen.
And looking at the two items, can you see what the placards, or what placards were used to differentiate them, beginning with the one on the left?
Yes, these two items were identified with placards D and E.
And in terms of the articles or the items that are directly next to the placard, what are those that are laying on the ground?
The item that was identified with placard number letter D is a blue backpack, and the item that is identified with placard letter E is a pair of shoes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 52 for identification, does that have a slightly different perspective of the same two items?
Yes, this is just another location shot from a different angle.
I'm sorry, which number was that last
That
time?
was 52, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And now showing Court's Exhibit 53 for identification, what does that show?
This is a close-up view of the item that was lettered E, and it's this pair of shoes.
Showing you now Court's Exhibit 54 for identification. What are we seeing here?
This is a view showing the blue backpack that was identified with letter D, and we are now going through the backpack to conduct an inventory of what is in the backpack.
And when you say we, are you still working with your law enforcement officer team?
Yes,
And do you see that the individual who's at least opening the backpack is wearing gloves?
yes,
Is that standard protocol?
yes,
And do you see that there's a sheet with handwritten notations that's to the right?
yes.
What's that?
This is, we call it a receipt and inventory. It's a documentation of the items of evidence that were collected, and we document those items as we collect them.
And you can see that there are a number of placards with different letters associated with it. Were all of those being used in the collection of evidence that day at the Winslow residence?
Yes,
Showing you Court's Exhibit 55 for identification, we're still talking about the blue backpack that was item D, is that right?
that's correct.
And does that show the contents of the exterior zipper area?
Yes, it does.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 56 for identification, is that another view of the contents of the backpack?
Yes,
And showing you Court's Exhibit 57 for identification, is that the interior zipper area?
yes,
And showing you Court's Exhibit 58 for identification, is that the main compartment of the backpack?
yes,
Now, showing you Court's Exhibit 59 for identification, does that have the contents of the backpack now laid out?
yes,
Did that include each of these things, a garage door opener, a handheld garment, GPS device, things of that nature?
yes,
Now showing you Court's Exhibit 60 for identification, is that item D in a close-up view?
yes, it is.
What did you do with these items when they were being collected from the residence?
Actually, this might be a good point to stop for switching gears, so we're going to go ahead and take our morning recess. We're going to be in recess for 20 minutes, not 15, but 20 minutes. I'll ask council to stay behind. Please remember the admonition, don't discuss the case with anybody, and please leave your notebooks on your chairs. We'll see you back here in 20 minutes. All right, the record will reflect that the jurors have left the courtroom. Is the door closed?
Yes, sir.
All right, the door is closed. Shortly before the court took the bench this morning, there were a couple of motions that were filed and served on the people. And I met just informally, briefly with counsel off the record to discuss the timing of this motion that was filed. I believe that it concerned testimony that was sought to be elicited from Detective Johnson. Is that correct?
In part, Your Honor, as well as another witness, which would be Angela Rosa.
Okay, and she's testifying next?
She would be testifying next, and it would also be evidence presented through Haley, the analyst who has been referenced as being working with the Sheriff's Department and Detective Johnson. I don't think there's going to actually be a need to recall Detective Johnson to testify to that area. I can get it in through the other two.
Okay, all right. Well, it's a motion to exclude any evidence from the Strava application, which, and I know, Mr. Owens, you haven't filed a response because you were just served with this morning. Frankly, this should have been something that we should have hashed out prior to the trial in limine motions. But just for the record, do you have a screenshot from a Strava application that shows Mr. Winslow's route that he took on his bike on May 24th? Is that correct?
I do, and I have a series of images that were obtained from the Strava website, which reflects the account associated with Mr. Winslow, as well as emails on Mr. Winslow's personal computer that were downloaded by the RCFL technician that show that he had an active account during that time frame. He has photographs that he posted of himself on that account. It is in his true name. The people believe we would be able to sufficiently authenticate that account and the images that we'd be displaying.
Okay, and I've been reading through the motion, and it sounds like the objection is hearsay, correct?
Yes, the objection is hearsay. There's a lack of foundation. Neither Detective Johnson nor Ms. Haley nor Ms. Rosa can lay a foundation for these records.
When we talk about the records, what are we talking about? Just a screenshot? Is that what you're seeking to introduce, Mr. Owen? A screenshot from what? From where? His computer?
The screenshot would be from the Strava website itself, which reflects the content that is being automatically generated by Mr. Winslow himself. So as the user, the account holder for the Strava application, which can be on either a phone or a GPS unit or even a smartwatch, that information is automatically uploaded into the account once you generated that account with Strava. The people's position is that it is a writing that can be authenticated by preponderance of the evidence to show that it's more likely than not that Mr. Winslow was the user of that account, that he was the individual who had been generating that information. And in terms of the screenshot that shows the GPS coordinates, that is something that is automatically computer generated and non-hearsay based upon the individual's location from their cell phone that's being used to used with the application.
All right, well, so I think the objection is hearsay, correct?
Yes.
All right, and I've
One objection.
okay, that's one. I've taken a look at People versus Rodriguez. You might want to take a look at it as well. Have you taken a look at that case?
Yes, I'm aware of that case.
All right, and just for the record, it's 16 Calvap 5th, 355. Are you familiar with that case?
I am,
Mr.
Your
Owens?
Honor. In fact, I reviewed it last week.
Okay, and it states that computer-generated report of a GPS system data from an ankle monitor worn by the defendant was not a statement of a person and therefore was not hearsay. Does that case not apply to Strava when it is also a GPS-based application?
Yes,
So what it doesn't seem like it's hearsay under People versus Rodriguez.
Well, in that, I mean, there may even be sort of a Kelly Fry issue because those records of the GPS, of the ankle monitors, those are those have been introduced for years. Those are very reliable. The ankle monitors and the detectives that can testify to those know how those ankle monitors work. We don't know how this Strava app works. And the proper person to authenticate how the records are generated would be a custodian of record or a qualified witness from Strava. The people contacted Strava and served them with a search warrant, and in reply, the representative from Strava said that they were completely unable to locate any records owing to Mr. Winslow on any information that was provided. So those records don't exist through Strava. And so we still can't authenticate those records because the profile is actually attributable to Mr. Winslow himself. They can't attribute it through a phone number or an email. They said they were completely unable to locate any records, the actual representative from Strava. And so we don't have any indication of reliability or trustworthiness of how these records are actually generated, how the application generates these route reports, when the route reports are generated, the mode of preparation of the route reports, what source of information is used to generate the route reports. These were records that were just downloaded by the detective, by Detective Johnson, and there's just no indicia of reliability of how these records are actually kept, maintained, or produced.
Does the record show that Mr. Winslow was riding his bike on May 24th, 2018, around the time that's alleged for count 6?
Yes, Your Honor, it shows that he began a ride at 3:26 p.m. and the ride origin is just approximately one house away from where the victim stated this occurred, and she stated, as she testified, that it happened around 3:30 p.m. So it does, and in terms of the follow-up requests by the Sheriff's Department, once Detective Johnson had located this profile, which is open source information available on the internet, he took some screen grabs of the content of the user account associated with Mr. Winslow, again, by his name, by his photographs, and I think also the pattern of activity that we've already established that shows he's an avid cyclist. I think we meet the authentication issue. He then obtained a search warrant, which was served upon Strava. Strava then responded that they no longer had the backup data for the information that was available online because the user had deleted his account. That can happen, of course, as the court knows. It happens with Facebook records, other things of that nature. Sometimes it's not backed up depending upon the policy, the data retention policy of a third-party entity like that. However, we do have the actual content from the screen grabs, and that content can be properly authenticated, and it's not hearsay, and I have witnesses who will be able to describe their familiarity and knowledge of the Strava application and how it works.
Who? Is it someone from Strava or somebody who knows how it works and can say it's a GPS-based application?
It would be the latter, and that would be Angela Rosa, who's going to describe her familiarity with the application itself, as well as from a user's perspective, what information can be generated.
And how did she gain this knowledge?
She was, actually, she happens to be an avid cyclist herself, and she has used the Strava application herself repeatedly, and she has now reviewed the exhibits that the people have prepared, as well as Haley McKinney, who would be the analyst from the Sheriff's Department who's been referenced, who would be able to describe how this application works.
All right, and I'm familiar with these fitness apps. Is it one of those applications where you start a bike ride, you push the button, and when you end a bike ride, you push the button, and it tells you how far you rode and gives you a little map?
Exactly, Your
and
Honor.
Speeds and so forth?
It does, and it allows the person to set goals for themselves. It allows them to promote themselves. It's all consistent with the information that we have from the emails and the communications that Mr. Winslow had on his own laptop showing his activity with the app.
All right, and so you intend to establish the way the app works through Angela Rosa?
Yes.
All right, now then, wouldn't that just go to the weight, not the admissibility of the evidence then?
No, Your Honor, just because Ms. Rosa is our CFL, just because she has an expertise in computers, doesn't mean she has any expertise in the Strava Fitness app. She may be a user of it, any of us could be a user of it. It doesn't mean that she has any specialized knowledge or expertise in how the reports are generated or how they're maintained. There's a whole list of a bunch of bike rides. We don't know if those were duplicative. We don't know if those are accurate reports of the bike ride. We don't know anything about how the Strava app generates or maintains these ride reports, or if they're accurate down to the street, down to we have the proper person to testify to how these reports are made, generated, logged is a qualified witness from Strava.
Your Honor,
All right.
they're not being offered as a business record that would require.
That's correct, and we're talking about, if we are talking about a custodian of records to satisfy the evidentiary requirement for a business record, I would agree that we need somebody for that, but do you agree that the data itself is not hearsay based on People versus Rodriguez? Because if it's not hearsay, we don't need to worry about having an exception of the hearsay rule.
It still needs to be authenticated. The records still need to be authenticated. We have to be able to show that those records are reliable and trustworthy.
All right.
And the proposed witnesses, the proponents of this evidence cannot testify to that.
Well, we don't know that yet. She hasn't taken a stand. So I will allow the evidence, assuming sufficient foundation can be laid. And Ms. Barr, if you want to take her on voir dire, I'll allow you to do that. I can't make a ruling right now until I hear sufficient authentication from Ms. Rosa. And if she can authenticate it, it's coming in. It's not hearsay. They do not need to establish a hearsay exception if it's not hearsay. And whether it's a business record or not, that doesn't matter because it's not hearsay.
Your
All
Honor,
right?
as it relates to the authentication issue, the people do intend to introduce the statement of a party opponent that would meet the hearsay exception that leads to the authentication for the jury to then find that he is the user of that account.
Okay, you're talking about a statement of Mr. Winslow, I'm assuming.
Correct, Your Honor, and I think that the
Well,
circumstance,
what did he say?
well, he is the user of the account, and we'd be able to establish that through the emails as well as the information that's contained on it.
Okay, this was not a statement he gave to the police then?
No.
Okay.
I'm just referring to the actual content of the exhibits themselves that show that it's his picture, it's his name, and that he is the individual who is, the reasonable inference would be is he's the individual who's using it at the time.
Okay, well, as I said, this should have been dealt with last month when we were going through all the in limine motions, because we had a 402 hearing. We're gonna have a 402 hearing essentially in front of the jury. If she can lay the foundation, it's coming in, and you can take her on voir dire. But I don't think it's something that we need to do outside the presence of the jury, because if you can't lay the foundation with Ms. Rosa, it's not coming in. So the screenshots are not coming in until and unless you can establish the foundational or the authentication through Ms. Rosa and how it works, okay?
Understood,
Your Honor,
thank you.
we didn't know who the proposed witness was going to be to testify to the Strava app until we got the witness list.
Okay,
We see that no one from Strava is listed on the witness list.
okay,
And
well,
so we don't know, this is the first we're
I
hearing it,
appreciate
Ms.
your
Rosa's.
briefing the issue, but it was served on the court 2 minutes before 9 o'clock before the jury came in. And I'm doing the best I can to, take a look at it and doing some research up here during the trial. That's when I found the Rodriguez case, which was not cited in your authority. Do you have any other authority you want to present, Mr. Owens?
Your Honor, I think that Rodriguez is on point in terms of the non-hearsay nature of automatically computer-generated information. That's the people's position with the GPS coordinates. I pulled that case last week in anticipation of arguing the issue. But as it relates to the authentication, I think that it's a question of whether or not the jury finds by a preponderance of the evidence that it is what we say it is. And given the nature of that information, I think that's what we're left with. I think it's very clear at this point in time, when you take into account the emails on his computer and the information contained on the actual screenshots themselves.
All right, well, we'll see. And look, I understand trials are very fluid and things happen. I don't want to be overly critical of you serving this right before the jury came in, but you know, I'm mindful of the jurors' time and I want to move the case along, but I appreciate you briefing the issue for the court. So we will see if you can lay sufficient authentication testimony through your witness. So why don't we go ahead and take, well, we'll take a 15-minute break. Manny, can you let the jurors know we'll start at 11?
Yes, sir.
The court reporter definitely needs a break. So we'll see everybody back here at 11 o'clock. We're in recess.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.